Jonathan Buckley is in position. Bucks, thanks for stopping by as always.
G'day, Kano. Going all right, mate?
I'm good, Bucks, and it was another interesting weekend of football. I'm not exactly sure where to start, but I think in fact I do know where to start, and it is with Paddy Ryder, because I was really interested in your discussion with Gary yesterday. You were both coming from different angles. He had one view and you had another, which is always interesting. So it's landed at 2 weeks, Bucks, for the hit on Will Day, or the bump. It was high impact, high contact, and he's going to miss 2 weeks. Your initial response to that?
Yeah, well, I spoke with Gary yesterday morning, and I was concerned about where the game was going, if that was going to draw a suspension. And I understand the head-high contact. I understand the trying to protect against concussion. But I just don't know what a taller player in Paddy, if it wasn't malicious, there wasn't a carelessness, I don't think, and I don't think he was negligent, but we've still found him guilty. So I had my comments were in the morning, and then the finding came out later, and as we do, it made it sound like mine was a response to the 2 weeks. But I mean, what do you see in that? I just think it's so difficult. It's such a hard game to play. What's he supposed to do?
Well, I would love to disagree with you, and I've had this chat with David King on a Friday. He is more with Gary, and I've also had this chat with Gary. So last year, it was early last year, when Patrick Dangerfield was suspended for. It was a more violent one on Jake Kelly than Paddy Ryder, but it was similar in the fact that it was a brace or a bump after his opponent had disposed of the ball. Now, my view is you can't eradicate the accidents in the game, and so I'm probably even more in your camp than you are, if you know what I mean. Like, I just think that there is always going to be accidents. We can't legislate the accidents out of the game. And when you slow it down frame by frame, as we always do, you never watch
but we don't
riders.
get that chance, do we?
You never watch it in real time, ever.
No.
Will Day got up and he played on, and then he was subbed out. So I just think it is a dangerous issue in terms of what we are going to eradicate from the game. And my concern is we're going to lose what makes the game great, and that is the physical contest.
If Will Day didn't get knocked out, what happens? And I've got a follow-up question for that. What happens if he doesn't get knocked out?
It's a free kick, and that's it.
So what if Will Day's threshold of concussion is lower than 80%? And I don't know this. This is just to throw it out there. So what if his threshold to be knocked out is lower than 80% of the players? And if Paddy Ryder ran into, I don't know, 8 out of 10 other AFL players, they bounce off, they get up, and nothing happens. How do we legislate for that?
Well, you can't. So you're saying, well, and I think this is fact, not that we want to go into areas that we're not experts on, but the more concussions you have, I think some players are more prone to easily be concussed than perhaps if it was just their first concussion. So if he had hit a player that had been concussed multiple times and the threshold is lower, as you're saying, so do you factor that in or not? I don't know, and I'm with you on the fact that it's a serious issue in the game, and people, when I speak about this, they say, oh, you don't take concussion seriously. You don't. But we do. But I just think if you put your hand up to play a physical sport when there's 18 players from each team on the side and they come from all angles, there's going to be some accidents, and I just saw it as a pure accident.
Well, the head-high contact was brought in initially to protect players that had their heads over the ball and weren't able to protect themselves. And I still think you can by turning your body into contact using your hips and your bum rather than your head. We saw players, as soon as that rule came in, we saw people leading with their head, and that actually made it worse in the short term. But it's not the head that we're actually protecting there, it's the neck, because we've had some really bad examples that we just do not want to see happen in the game as it continues. And I understand that. Whenever a player's got his head over, the Mitch Robertson one was, that was really close, and Mitch didn't go hard, and I don't think Paddy Ryder went hard. But what is he doing? He's trying to close down a player who's coming at him. He doesn't know if he's going to kick, handball, or evade, so he's closing down space, which is a football action. He doesn't actually put his hands up because he doesn't. I don't think he believes he's going to kick. I think he believes he's going to try and get around him. So he's closing down the space quickly. The kick goes, and within a millisecond, he turns and he basically braces for contact himself because the contact was inevitable. I just don't know. The initial actions are football actions, and led to that contact, and I just don't know where we go. I might be old
going
school.
Soft.
It's not a soft game. It's a hard game, and there is still a lot of contact. But I don't think Will Day was in grave danger, because if Paddy Ryder really wanted to, he could have run through him and put him in the next week, but he didn't, and he didn't because he showed care. He whatever the opposite of neglect is, he showed he had a consideration for an opposition player in that circumstance, and he softened that as much as he possibly could. And yet,
you can have your say on that as well if you want to join in. 0433 98 11 16 September text. Where do you sit? So I've been big on this, that the most dangerous thing you can do on a footy field is raise your knee to either spoil or mark the footy.
And that's a free hit. That's the last free hit in the game, I reckon.
It is. So I reckon there was it might have been Draper
for want of a better term, mate.
Just a big spoil with the knee, and that it is a free hit. What if that knee hits someone in the head, like Callum Ward in the 2016 prelim final, and he's out cold?
Well, we can have. I mean, we're going to take high flying out of take speckies out of the game, because we get people knocked out when knees go in the back of heads and people get knocked out. Like, if you want high contact, high impact, and negligence, I mean, what are you jumping on someone's back for? You're going to hit him in the head. I mean, if we're really going to take this to the end, there's some harder hits in marking contests than what we just saw.
So to wrap that up, that's my concern with it. So where does it start and where does it end? And the people that are so strong on getting rid of all head knocks out of the game, they have to be strong on raising knees to spoil or to mark the ball.
What I would say is it's bloody hard to adjudicate. Like there's conversations going on behind the decisions, and Gary and I spoke about this last week. There's conversation going behind the decisions that are exactly like the one we're having.
Yep.
Where do we want to go? Where is it? What does it mean to the fabric of the game? It's not as if they just plonk on 2 weeks and say, oh, that's a good idea. There's lots of discussions going on. So I think you need to give the MRO, the match review panel, that you've got to give the people that are making these decisions, and even when the appeals board comes up, they're having these conversations about what's good for the game. So it's grey area, and we can not agree with it, but this is they don't get the benefit of explaining their decision. Mate, we'll move on from that. You wrote an article about Nat Fyfe and spoke about his leadership. It was over in the Perth papers, and I'm not sure how far it got back here. Actually, I'm just watching Brody Mychek put his knee into the back of Jeremy McGovern's head. Your opinion is that the Dockers should release him from the burden of captaincy?
I read an article that Nat Fyfe did with Mark McGowan in the Herald Sun, and it was to plug a sponsored product, a commercial agreement, but in it there was so much gold from Nat Fyfe in this, and I think he's the most fascinating individual in the game.
Where was the article? Where's the interview?
It was in News Corp, so it was a Herald Sun piece.
Yes.
And Mark McGowan did it, and I spoke to Mark about it. I said, mate, that was, you read a column and it sort of makes an impact on you.
Yep.
And it was on the back of Joel Selwood breaking the captaincy record. And Joel was all about, it's a club thing. I was lucky to land at Geelong. I was lucky to be surrounded by the Harry Taylors and the Tom Harleys of the world. And I've been fortunate to be with so many great people. And so I had me thinking about Selwood. And then I read this piece from Fyfe. And Fyfe was all about himself. And that is fine, because the focus of the piece was about himself.
Well, you did make the point in the text that
I did.
You don't know what the questions were asked. You don't know how they're edited. So I thought that was good to acknowledge that. But
I rang the journalist to check that as well.
Yep.
So I said, am I on the money? In essence, Fyfe said, he's had a career that he's been able to achieve a lot. He's been exposed to a lot of opportunities, played 200 games. He doesn't feel hard done by the injuries. He spoke about having his hour-to-hour mindset, like on point, and he spoke about spending a lot of time in solitude, and that's part of his personality profile. He's so driven. I don't know. I just thought of you, and I wanted to bring it up with you because my memories of you as a player was that single-mindedness, that drive, that want to be great. But then I reckon you evolved into the captain that we saw at the end. I don't know if Nat Fyfe's evolved into that. And is that the right personality traits to be leading a footy club? Now, his record as captain is poor, and that's not his own doing. I think it's 32-55, and he hasn't taken them to a final.
Yep.
And there was nothing in the News Corp piece that was about, I want to drive this club to a premiership. I want to captain a premiership. It was all about Nat Fyfe.
Some great points. One is, I know Nat Fyfe isn't responsible entirely for Fremantle's performance and their win-loss ratio, but he is a part of it, because there's a lot of studies around, and there's evidence over the time that a charismatic and driven leader with the right attitude towards team and bringing people together is as important as anyone in the organisation. But I think, like a senior coach, we probably overrate and over and probably put too much good and too much bad on those positions. But it's a tough one to write. Given I understand the articles have come in the circumstances, but it's a tough one to write when he hasn't played, because when you're not actually, as you said in the article, when you're not getting your hands dirty, you lose that lead by example element. But that doesn't mean he's not doing it behind the scenes. It doesn't mean. It'd be interesting to talk to his teammates, and you probably only get this in retrospect because they're not going to be as open about a player that they've got in their midst. But there's probably some really strong elements to him, and there's probably some improvement areas, like with everyone else. For me, I was made the captain in '99, and I wasn't anywhere near a leader. I just wasn't.
Why?
I reckon I wasn't in the top 12 leaders in the organisation. I was too self-interested. I was too focused on getting the best out of myself.
So was there a moment?
Yep.
Did someone have a conversation with you? What was the moment?
Well, it was 2 years in. So '99, it was Shory's last year, and we finished last. I was going to say we won the wooden spoon if you could win it. Mick Malthouse came across in 2000. We won our first 5 games and then lost our next 9 and missed the finals. The season finished in August or even late July because of the Olympics in 2000. And I was getting away to Europe for 6 weeks, and I just remember thinking, I'm 28 years old. I've been captain for 2 years. We haven't played a final since '94. Yeah, I'm making All Australians, winning best and fairest, and feel like I'm improving every year. But something's not right. Something's just not coming together here. So I chose to spend that time to reflect. I asked some questions of my teammates before I went away, and I've spoken quite openly about this. I had Heath Scotland, who was a 19-year-old and raw, and I said to him, what do you get from me in this environment? And he basically said that when I'm talking to you, I feel like you're just waiting for the next opportunity to speak. So it was just all one way. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, and that was off the back of probably having the same bit of feedback given to me 100 times a year for the last 5 or 6 years, but I just wasn't ready to hear it. So I went away and came back with just a whole different mindset of not being the best I could be, but allowing others to be the best they could be. And the main thing was criticism. I was a critical leader. My feedback was all about where you can get better, where you can improve, because that's how I viewed myself, and that was my self-talk to fix the things that weren't right. And that's the way I communicated to teammates. So it didn't go well. Criticism doesn't work. You've got to reinforce the positives, and that was a big change for me. And I know that I came back and I was a much better leader. Well, I went from not being a leader to being a leader, and then I went from being just a leader to being an effective leader in my mind. And it was all off the back of thinking of others first and celebrating what they were doing and realising there's more than one way to it. I enjoyed the second half of my career so much more because of that growth. And now Nat Fyfe might be there. He might be there. And there's plenty of other players that are there. And there's plenty of other players in leadership positions that have got elements of this, whether it's their self-drive and lead by example, or whether it's the, build up others and celebrate them. there's so many different things that make people tick. I mean, I would see you as a player who was self-driven.
And it was to my absolute detriment. So you had the moment where you clicked and you changed. I probably didn't.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with myself.
Did you hold leadership positions?
Yeah, I did. I was leadership vice captain at for a couple of seasons, and people had those conversations with me like this. You're going to regret going about it the way you're going about it in time, and you think, oh, okay, well that's all right. I'm playing all right, and I never thought I was selfish because I was. But looking back, I was, and it probably wasn't until Ken Hinkley got there, and then I did change, but it was too late for me. So I never had the moment where it clicked for me, and I would have been a really frustrating teammate at times, and I've spoken about that as well. And I look back and cringe on a few things that I did over the journey that I just can't believe I did.
So I'm sure Nat Fyfe is going through this. He seems like an intelligent guy. He's going through this self-exploration, and he's trying to work out where he fits and how. I'm absolutely positive of it. He's not an unconscious,
he's highly
unthinking person. So I'm sure he has, and that the responses to that article talking about solitude, etc. That's okay to know what allows you to present as the best version of yourself. So I reckon, I don't reckon we'll know. He's a fair way into his career, but I don't reckon we'll know until we hear a little more from his statements. But in that snapshot, as you're saying, there's no doubt that his focus and what he was, the subject of his discussion point, was more singular and individual than we'd like to hear at times.
Let us know your thoughts. 1300 736 736. There is a lot we've got to get through this morning. Chris Scott had some things to say about Collingwood and the way they play. I want to speak and ask Bucks about what's the philosophy when speaking about other teams.
And we need to talk about Jack Ginnivan at some point, mate. I think we should.
Everyone says to me, stop talking about Ginnivan.
No. I'm happy to go there. Little short, sharp grab.
Okay,
we need to do it.
We'll do that on the other side of this. With Nathan Buckley through until 10 o'clock and a big show through until 12, and a lot of time to take your calls as well. 1300 736 736. By popular demand, the temper text is just going off, Bucks. Talk to me. Jack Ginnivan is the way that...
I've got something to play. Before.
Okay, well,
I've prepared
this.
Ammo.
I've
got ammo. No, well, all it is us. This is the media talking about the media. I've now moved into this mode. But let's hear what you had to say after round one.
Yeah.
You finished 17th last year. You've beaten St Kilda, who no one expects will do anything this year. Stop carrying on. That's Jack Ginnivan, and first of many.
Pretty strong comments for a young fella after round one. Did you see his round two game?
Yes.
Against Adelaide?
21, I think he had one or two goals.
What did you reckon?
I thought he was excellent.
Yeah.
In his second game.
Yeah.
Since then he's battled, but and that's the
he was a bit quieter.
That's the role of a
round three was okay. Round four it was quiet.
Small forward.
But as a young guy, what do you because I see what you were talking about. I absolutely do. And I've got no doubt that internally there would have been some conversations had around, look, enjoy yourself, but maybe this word here or that word there doesn't really paint us in the best light. No, so I see the bona fides of that. What about when we look at a young bloke and we want to see that exuberance and we want to see that sort of, it's rawness, isn't it? That's not polished. It's definitely not polished, and it's definitely not thinking about the outcome. That's in the moment. Don't we want to see more of that?
So if I had my time again, I would have been more critical of the club for putting him in that position than I would have been personally critical of Jack.
Yeah.
So I didn't want it to come across as a crack at a 19-year-old. It was more so, was he the right person to give the GoPro to?
I think that's a fair question as well.
And then they had hours to edit this.
Yep.
So this isn't a live GoPro. This and we're talking semantics here, but so they've edited it and they've thought, this is great. Let's put it out there. And I get that people say, it's great insight. Is it good insight? Is it good insight? Like me listening to Craig McRae address the players prior to the game is good insight. Me watching Jack Ginnivan carry on after the game, that's not great insight. But
But
I
what
might
you're
be-
looking for is not what everyone else is looking for.
No, so I was going to say I might be on my own on that.
Yeah.
And then the follow up to are they asking him something? Are they asking him to play a way that is not going to have longevity in the game? So to see him go after Selwood, to see him starting to, I'm going to say fake for free kicks.
Play for free kicks, yeah.
Play for free kicks is the right term. I would rather see him play 30 games and no one really knows who he is, and then just establish himself. And then I think that's a better launching pad for a career than him being as famous as he is right now.
Well, we've
those
lost that.
reasons.
That's we can't turn back time, can we? I think knowing the young man, he's got some real go in him. But he's very respectful. He works really hard, but when he gets into a competition, he's an abrasive little mozzie. Like he doesn't mind. He made a really immature comment when he's saying, "Well, yeah, that's my job to get under the skins." Like that's just something that's not quite communicated as well as we would hope to see him communicate it. But all he's basically saying is, I love the contest. I don't mind being involved in the cut and thrust and the lip, because it makes me feel like I'm in it, and I lift and I rise. It gives me energy. Whereas for some guys, me personally, I reckon I was one of the worst sledges going around. If I got involved in that, it was the worst thing for me. But I think he's just saying that's good for him.
Yeah, a lot of the comments you make in the media are reflective of your own career. Like
absolutely.
I gave the finger to Brodie Holland against you. You probably played in that game against Collingwood at Footy Park, and it was like my 11th game. I was 19.
Yeah.
We won. I was emotional, and I gave Brodie Holland the finger. And it's the most cringeworthy vision you are ever likely to see. And Mark Williams made me get up on the Monday in front of the whole group and basically apologise for everyone. So I look back and go, I wish I didn't do that. And I don't know. I reckon Collingwood would maybe say the same about that vision in round one.
So did anyone know? So this is case in point, and we don't have to go on for forever. Did anyone know externally that Mark Williams asked you to do that in front of the team as an 11-game player?
No.
So we don't know how Craig McRae or Collingwood have handled this, and they may well have handled it in exactly the same way, and the lesson can be taught without the public needing to know about it. So I think that there's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot we don't see, and you can only ever comment on what you do see, and it's the tip of the iceberg. We don't know what's underneath it. I don't know. I had 6 months with Jack, and he's a good kid, and he's actually goes about it the right way. I think he works really hard. It was hilarious when Joel Selwood went to tackle him on the wing with a stiff arm. Jack throws his leading arm up, and he actually. He Selwooded Selwood, and got that freaking. That's why Joel was so frustrated, and I just think that's an awesome little moment there. And obviously we can criticise Jack for dropping his knees, whatever. I think you challenge the tackler, and the tackler needs to be better at how he handles players like that. You've just got to. Some people give a stiff arm and don't argue. You've got to find different ways of being able to effectively execute the skill, but. There's always nuance to it, but it doesn't hurt to talk about it. And Jack's now on the radar, and he knows he's going to have this on his CV for the rest of his life. But it's neither here nor there, because his hard work and his attitude towards whatever he's got coming in front of him will dictate his career.
All right, we've got to get a lot to get through in the next 20 minutes. Are midfield possessions a waste? Well, are midfielders wasting their possessions? I want to chat to Bucks about that. I also want to speak about the shrugging free kicks. And do Melbourne have the competition spooked? That's all coming up next. Kane Cornes and Nathan Buckley with you. Got a couple of issues we'd like to get through before we let Bucks go, including this off the Timber text. Bucks, what were the tactics used to beat Melbourne last year? Before you answer that, there is a narrative from the media, at least, that it's Melbourne's again. And that I said during the week, they're 15% better than the next best side. David King's probably said something similar, and there's others. Bucks, firstly, what were the tactics you used to beat them? And do they have the whole of the competition spooked, and we're only at round 4?
Well, halfway through last year, I think we'd only won the 3 games, and Melbourne had only lost the 1, and it was to Adelaide. The tactics we used were to play our brand as best we possibly could. We needed to look after the ball and shift them in defence. We didn't want to allow their intercept defenders just to dominate and have free will. So we needed to build the ball and shift the angle to move them off their positions. So it was a little bit harder for them to control that part of it. But the main thing with Melbourne is you need to win the stoppage battle. You need to force them to run the wrong way from stoppage and to get back to support their defence, because when they do get their tails up in stoppage and they can go forward and access even numbered forward line, they're very dangerous and very difficult to stop, and they set up behind the ball extremely well. So they were the main ones that we needed to.
Do you have, as you're coaching your side and you're focused on who you're playing this week, do you have one eye on what they're doing or not?
I mean, I think you always watch the best teams in the competition, the teams that are getting the results, and it's not always the same year to year. So, and I still think 4 weeks is still quite a small sample size. It's enough to have a look at teams that, might be going through a really hard patch, or teams that are flying, or teams that are beating expectation. I mean, that's all great, but that's generally on our own views from 4 weeks earlier. It's still not grounded in absolute reality. I think in 4 weeks' time, when when teams have probably have played a greater cross section of teams that are going well and struggling. So Fremantle, for instance, they're 3-1, but they've played Giants, they've played Adelaide and GWS, who are sides that are probably have been hit and miss at this time. So. We don't know who you've really come up against. So I think another 4 weeks and then you know. So, but no, you don't. You look at the best teams, but you've still got to focus on yourself. You've got to keep building your own brand, and that's why you can't get knee-jerk. You've got to keep, rather than listening to anything external, you just got to keep building on the blocks that you think you're going to get the best out of your group.
A lot of text coming through on the Western Bulldogs and where we see them. I think a way into that is, the midfield get big numbers when you look at the midfielders that play through there.
Yep.
And I had a look at it on Footy Classified last night. 8 out of the top 10 biggest ball winners in the game play for sides that are in the bottom 5. Has a disposal ever meant less in football, Bucks? And how do you analyse who is doing damage with the footy and who's not?
It's a great question, a great topic, and the answer is no, I don't reckon the disposal has ever been worth less. I think the number of possessions that a player accumulates is just not relevant at all. It speaks to their capacity to work hard and to win the ball, but it might say more about the game plan of the team that they're a part of than anything else. Collingwood and Richmond have always been a low possession side, high impact. So their midfielders have played roles where you don't see them getting many more than 25 touches in a game, but they still have massive impact, and they've been the best team in the comp for the best part of the last 5 years. Petrarca and Oliver get high possessions, but I'd say that they're quite high impact. I reckon midfielders. I've done a little list because we knew we were talking about this. I reckon there's accumulators, bulls, and guns. And yes, I reckon, like I was an accumulator early in my career, and I just got a heap of the ball, but potentially mostly in the back half because we didn't have a great team. But I improved that.
Yeah, I think you're selling yourself short a bit there. You were high meters gain, and you were able to go forward.
Well, maybe I was nearly
scoreboard impact.
I was nearly maybe a bit of a bull. So
I reckon you'd be a modern day bull.
So I've got accumulators. I've got Mitchell, McRae. I know this is not exhaustive, but Mitchell, McRae, Treloar, Parrish as a for instance. So they're accumulators. Blokes that kill with 1,000 cuts. They get around the ball. Maybe they're handballs, kicks, but not necessarily high impact. They need players around them for them to have high impact. The Bulls, I've got Dangerfield, Fife, and Ollie Wines, and that might be a little bit harsh on Ollie Wines because he's a gun. But so Dangerfield and Fife in particular, guys that are really good at stoppage, They're very good aerially, so and that's when think they're having their highest impact. They're not great kicks, but they get territory. They might kick it 60 metres every time they get it, so you get great territory out of them. But I don't think they're not scalpel type players. And then there's the guns, and I put Cripps there, Petrarca, I put Heaney there, Martin. I think De Goey's got that capacity. He's building towards it. Lockie Neal, Bont. And they're the guys that they only need 25. They might get over 30 at times, but they only need 25. But they just make things happen when they get the ball. I think Shea Bolton is nearly in here. So I think there's still a lot of accumulators in the game, and that's not to knock them because they're playing a role for their team. But accumulators are not people that you worry about in the coach's box.
No. So did you have alarm bells in the box? I mean, I sat in the coach's box rarely, but it was he's had 5, and someone in the back. You'd never had any of that.
Oh no, he's had X has had 10.
Yeah.
X has had 10, and we're 20 minutes in. It would be like, okay, well, let's get our midfielders to win a little bit more of the ball because he's only winning ball that we should be winning. So it's not always about, okay, well, let's clamp him down, let's lock him down. I mean, I'm sure you'd be an advocate for running with and tagging, mate.
I would be. Bucks, but no one does it anymore.
Mate, if you're on a list, you would probably be in that role. There's not that many. Like GWS are trying to turn Lockie Ash into one, and it's relatively effective. And he's actually probably learning off a guy, Matty De Boer, who's done it as well as any in recent times. There's actually not that many. We had Levi Greenwood, but Levi was good with a couple, but there were other players that he wasn't actually effective in. So there's no use giving someone a role that they can't do or that it's not going to be effective.
Because Mitchell famously had 50 against you, didn't he? Tom Mitchell at the MCG, I reckon.
Yeah,
back.
yeah, he did.
You were quoted after the game, and it caused
didn't hurt
a bit
us.
of a stir.
Yeah, that didn't hurt us.
Yeah,
But I mean, 50 touches hurts you because that's say there's 20 more than you want him to get, but that's 20 you want someone else to win. Ablett, 2 different games against Gold Coast, Ablett had 50. One we won by 10 goals, one we lost by 3. I mean, it's not always going to impact the result. So you've got to think about what impacts the result. The numbers alone, don't get caught up in them.
Bucks, I knew it would be fun, and the hour has flown by. We've got to let you go, but appreciate you speaking so honestly. Apologies to all the texts we couldn't get through aiming at Bucks, but we'll try and do our best to do that in the next couple of hours. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Cheers. Good luck for the week, mate.